Howard and his ailing wife take a stroll every evening. Both retired, they reside in a quiet suburban villa. A 15-minute walk leads them to a livelier area with supermarkets, night markets, and various restaurants. They've decided to spend their remaining years like this. The elderly couple seems to have everything yet nothing. They met during their doctoral studies abroad, each other's first love. After returning to China, they got married. Howard became a university professor, eventually retiring as a dean of a branch campus. Daisy pursued a career as a doctor but faced intellectual deterioration due to a medical accident. Their only son, well-educated, tragically lost his life while bravely helping others. If one talks about the pain of life, it's too much, pain so intense that they might sacrifice some of their lifespan to alleviate it. However, having endured the overwhelming pain, they must continue living. Howard's retirement income is substantial, and Daisy's medical expenses are fully covered, with additional compensation. Their son's sacrifice is recognized through subsidies from the government, Howard's school, and Daisy's hospital. They live at a leisurely pace, watching TV in the morning, assisting Daisy with rehabilitation exercises in the afternoon, and taking her for an evening walk. Occasionally, they dine out. During holidays, they host visits from successful students who have made notable achievements in their respective fields. The accomplishments and enthusiasm of these students serve as pillars supporting Howard in moving forward. One day, Howard takes Daisy to a small restaurant for dinner. The waiter comes to take their order, and suddenly, Daisy screams, "Sam!" Sam is their deceased son. Howard examines the young man more closely and sees a resemblance to the young Sam. Height, build, facial features, all seem similar. The waiter is slightly startled, and Howard immediately signals him with a gesture of clasped hands. The young man quickly catches on. He crouches down with the order tablet and asks Daisy what she'd like to eat. Daisy holds onto his hand and says, "Sam, why haven't you come back for so long?" The young man carefully looks into her eyes, recognizing the urgency and confusion that reveal she is not in a normal state. He understands immediately and reassures her, "I've been busy with work, but I'll come back whenever I have the chance, okay?" "Son, when you're not busy, you must come back," Daisy insists. Okay, the young man agrees, playing along. Perhaps out of pity, as the young man leaves after taking the order, he exchanges a few words with the waiter looking after the table. From then on, he attends to them personally, being attentive and accommodating to Daisy's nonsensical talk. Howard is on the verge of tears. If Sam were still alive, he would be 48 this year, likely a professor by now. Yet, this young man is just an ordinary waiter, but he still brings great joy to Daisy. For her, as long as her son is present, achievements, success, wealth, none of it matters. Later, Howard frequently takes Daisy to that restaurant, and naturally, he becomes acquainted with the young man, Luke. Luke, 22 years old, graduated from a vocational school and has been working here for 2 years. In another year, the boss will provide him with Social Security. He is content with his current situation, earning around 3,000 yuan a month with free meals and accommodation provided by the restaurant. Howard feels a bit sorry for Luke. Combined with Daisy's frequent suggestion, "Let's go eat at our son's place," referring to the restaurant where Luke works, Howard couldn't hold back one day. He quietly asks Luke, "My wife considers you as our late son. What do you think? Could you visit our home every week, and I'll give you an extra 2,000 yuan each month?" Luke happily agrees without refusing the money or saying, "Why give me money? I'm not doing it for the money." Unlike Howard's students who bring expensive wine, paintings, and calligraphy every time they visit, Luke has a different attitude. He values the money. This initially makes Howard a bit uncomfortable, but he quickly understands. Luke is young, in need of money, and Howard is essentially using money to comfort him and please his ailing wife. Luke has 4 days off each month, and whenever he is free, he goes to Howard's house to accompany Daisy. On his first visit, he brings some fruits. On the second, he helps with massaging Daisy's legs, and on the third, as soon as he receives his salary, he starts calling her Mom. The first call is unclear, but the second is more distinct. Daisy smiles. In her semi-dementia state, her eyes only light up when she sees Luke. With Luke around, Daisy's health improves a bit. Every time Luke is about to come back, she excitedly rehearses what she wants to say to him with Howard. Tea and cured ham must be prepared in advance, and they meticulously pluck the pig hairs from the ham with reading glasses. On a day when Luke is expected, Daisy's nephew comes to deliver a Dragon Boat Festival gift. Seeing the lavish display on the coffee table, he laughs, "You're really treating me like a VIP." Daisy says, "My son will be back soon." The nephew is startled. Howard pulls him aside and briefly explains the situation. The nephew is concerned. "Do you know his background?" "I have a general idea. Uncle, he's just a restaurant waiter, earning only $3,000 a month. If he frequently comes to your house and sees your calligraphy, porcelain, what if he learns about your savings? Can he resist any ill intentions? Even if he doesn't, what if he boasts to his friends? Such people shouldn't be welcomed into your home. As the saying goes, the barefoot are not afraid of those with shoes. I don't think it's that serious. Uncle, you've always interacted with high-quality individuals throughout your life. You haven't dealt with people from the lower strata. You're too trusting. Haven't you seen the news? Several thugs brutally attacked and injured someone on the street just to steal a few hundred yuan worth of gold bracelets. Howard is a bit upset, partly because his nephew doesn't understand him or his wife, and partly because his nephew's words have planted a seed of worry in his mind. Howard installs cameras in the yard and living room. When Luke comes again, Howard begins observing him. Luke is lively and quick-witted. He doesn't hide his impoverished background and expresses genuine admiration for Howard's house and status. "If only you were my dad, I'll never be able to afford a house like this in my life. Oops, I accidentally left a mark on the floor while moving the table. Is it okay? Floors are expensive, right? I know everything in your house is expensive," and once he asked Howard about the calligraphy on the wall, and upon learning it's from a famous artist, he asked, "How much does that cost?" The phrases, "How much money?" become his catchphrases. One day, the neighbors imported a pine tree from Japan, and the family of 3 went to see the spectacle. The tree was quite large, grown in a peculiar posture. The pit on the ground was ready to plant the tree. Luke, curious, asked, "Did this tree come by plane?" The owner said, "Yes." "How much did that cost?" "The tree cost 2 million, actually, the tree itself isn't expensive, it's mainly the shipping cost." Luke sucked in a breath. Seeing a ton of soil beneath the tree, he regretfully said, "There's too much mud underneath, otherwise, you could save on shipping costs." The owner and Howard exchanged smiles but said nothing. Back home, Luke kept talking about it. Howard explained to him that having less soil might endanger the tree, and professionals were needed for transplantation. Professional care, pruning, and maintenance also required experts. Luke thought for a moment, with an expression as if his own flesh had been painfully butchered, spending so much money on a tree, "Well, I don't see what's so attractive about it." After dinner at Howard's house, serving Daisy to sleep, Luke leaves. It's not completely dark yet when Howard sees that instead of leaving directly, Luke turns to the neighbor's door. Howard feels a slight unease, so he quietly stands by the window and watches. Luke uses his phone to take pictures of the tree from various angles, seemingly determined to capture its 2 million worth essence. Finally, he stands in front of the tree, takes a selfie, and leaves satisfied. This is the potential danger. If he shares it on social media, mentioning that someone's family bought a 2 million tree, wouldn't it invite trouble? After careful consideration, Howard decides it might be better to find an opportunity to let Luke go. Without waiting for Howard to initiate the conversation, on the second weekend, Luke calls to take a day off, explaining that his girlfriend has come from their hometown, and he wants to spend a day showing her around the city. He suggests deducting the wages proportionally. Howard agrees. After hanging up, Daisy eagerly asks, "When is our son coming back?" Howard mumbles, "He won't come today, his girlfriend is here." "He's dating? Why doesn't he bring the girl home for us to meet?" Howard reassures her, they're not that familiar yet. Let them get to know each other first before meeting the parents. Daisy remains disappointed, continuously muttering, "We should have invited them to come and visit. We, as the elders, should extend the invitation. Young girls are shy." Fortunately, due to her impaired cognitive abilities, she soon forgets about it. However, every 2 or 3 hours, she asks, "Our son is not coming back today." In the evening, Howard has to send Luke a message, asking him to call Daisy and explain that he is working overtime today. Luke calls, and since Daisy has poor hearing, Howard puts the phone on speaker near her ear. Luke says, "Mom, I'm working overtime today and can't come back. I'll visit you next week." Suddenly, Daisy recalls the matter of him having a girlfriend and asks, "Oh, do you have a girlfriend?" Luke replies, "Yes, he. Bring her home for Mom to see." Howard interjects, "I told you they haven't gotten acquainted yet." "Mom, we'll bring her to see you when we've settled down," Luke quickly catches on. However, there's a subtle sense of disappointment in his tone. Howard keenly picks up on this disappointment. Luke probably wanted to bring his girlfriend to broaden her horizons, but he dares not due to the lack of acceptance here. Howard cannot let this idea take root, otherwise, today he brings his girlfriend to broaden her horizons, tomorrow he brings relatives and friends to show off, and the day after tomorrow, their home could become Luke's urban base. The decision to dismiss him needs to be expedited. Although it will cause harm to Daisy, her memory is increasingly chaotic, and the damage won't last long. Moreover, hurting her alone is better than turning the entire household upside down. 4 days later, Howard woke up and was shocked. His home had been ransacked, with paintings, ceramics, and cash all gone. He immediately called the police. The police checked the surveillance footage, revealing 3 thin men wearing masks throughout the entire process. Judging by the speed of the theft, it seemed like someone familiar with the place, heading straight for the valuables. Howard promptly informed the police that his prime suspect was Luke. Even if it wasn't him, it was certainly linked to him, as in the eyes of this young man, Howard's home was like paradise, and how could he resist sharing it with others? The police went to find Luke, but he had no alibi for the time of the crime. The authorities then began investigating his friends, but found nothing. Howard didn't know exactly how the police spoke to Luke, but he knew that even if the young man was naive, he understood that he was suspected by everyone. The second week passed without Luke showing up. Howard didn't contact him either. It wasn't until half a month later that the case was solved, and it had nothing to do with Luke. It was the work of professional criminals who targeted luxury homes, with solitary elderly individuals being their preferred victims. Howard thought about calling Luke. Daisy was hospitalized, and her condition was uncertain. She was in a prolonged state of unconsciousness, occasionally waking up and asking, "What happened to my son?" After much hesitation, he finally made the call. Luke rushed to the hospital, sweating profusely. They exchanged a somewhat awkward glance, and Howard gestured for him to go into the hospital room. The young man stormed in like a whirlwind. Indeed, he was a good kid who didn't hold grudges. Luke held Daisy's hand without waking her, sitting beside her. Soon, Daisy woke up, and Luke softly called, "Mom." He was actually in tears. "Mom," he called again. Daisy weakly breathed, smiling as she patted his hand without saying a word. In that moment, Howard had an ominous premonition because her gaze was clear. She didn't show excessive attachment to her son, she seemed completely awake, remembering everything. She smiled kindly, looking at her husband, then at Luke, and finally, at the window. She sighed, still with a smile. The emotions in her eyes sent a shiver through Howard, a mix of tenderness and resignation. Soon, she fell asleep again. As expected, this time she didn't wake up. Howard painfully took care of his wife's affairs. While tidying up her belongings at home, he noticed the small mark on the floor and remembered that he hadn't notified Luke. Perhaps there was no need for any notification, he thought. When burning incense for Daisy on the 5th and 7th day, Howard saw a small sunflower in front of her tombstone. It had a note that read, "To my son, Luke, with respect." Howard's tears welled up. He had many misunderstandings about this young man, and perhaps he should call and thank him. Luke took a leave and came to a tea house as agreed. He kept his head down, appearing reluctant to talk. "She's gone, I didn't have time to notify you," Howard said. How did you find out?" "I went to the hospital to ask." "The flowers must have been expensive. Your salary isn't high." "It's affordable even if it's not high," he said, lifting a small cup of tea. His suppressed anger surfaced, and he said, "I can't get used to tea, alcohol is better. You can finish it in one gulp. What's the point of drinking tea? I called you here today just to thank you, nothing else." "No need to thank me," he said bluntly. "I took the money." Howard had nothing to say. He even regretted calling him out. Suddenly, Luke said, "I'll pay you back sooner or later." "Why say such things? I've actually known you for a long time. I knew you when I was in elementary school," he said. Treating tea as alcohol, he gulped it down. He explained that when he was in elementary school, Howard's son had become a local hero, making headlines in major newspapers. There was even an event at their school where he presented flowers to the 2 elderly people, and there was a group photo at home. He didn't expect to have such a connection later on. He found it a noble thing and was happy to do it, but he was short of money. When Howard offered him money, he took it, feeling guilty about it. He hadn't mentioned this because he was afraid of hurting their feelings and also didn't want to reveal his complicated feelings. Seeing their well-off living conditions, he was impressed but never thought of stealing or robbing. When the neighbor planted a new tree, he commented a bit more, feeling that the neighbor and Howard exchanged mocking glances. He wanted to take a photo of that tree but didn't dare to take out his phone until the evening. He wanted to show it to his girlfriend. It was an expensive tree. I don't know when you started having a bias against me. I didn't feel it initially, but when I noticed it, Aunt Daisy couldn't do without me, and I couldn't do without her. She's the kindest mother I've ever seen, unlike my own mother who used to beat me from a young age. Now, she only cares about playing mahjong in the village. When she loses, she asks me for money, and she only smiles when I give her money. In my heart, I always think, it would be so good if Aunt Daisy could consider me her son forever. I'm willing to be her son. He cried again. Howard's heart trembled. The day she passed away, you didn't let me accompany her. Luke looked heartbroken, like a child. Why? Just because I'm poor? Haven't I gone to college? Because I'm a dish carrier? Is that it? But there are many people like us. Do they all want to harm you? If you think that way, what about the person who comes to fix your plumbing, deliver your packages, move your soil, or collect your garbage? Do they all know that you have money and want to rob you? Okay, I understand. You think the proportion of poor people harming others is higher. I'm not sure about the specific ratio, but let's say the ratio of wealthy people harming others is 1 in 10,000, and the ratio of poor people harming others is 1 in 1,000. Relatively speaking, it's 10 times higher. But aren't there 999 good people among those poor people? Why can't I be one of those 999 people? My girlfriend really wanted to visit your home, and she even brought eggs from her hometown. But we sold them by the roadside for 130 yuan. He provocatively looked at Howard. Self-esteem emerged stubbornly from him. He sat up straighter than ever before. Howard choked up, saying, "Child." Luke's gaze avoided his. "Next time, bring your girlfriend to our home." Luke didn't expect him to say this. He stole a glance at Howard's face. His face used to be square, but now it was completely relaxed, becoming oval. Luke's straightened body slumped again. "No need. Come on, anytime." His voice already had a hint of sobbing. Luke just made a sound of acknowledgement, pulled out a tissue to wipe his nose, and then handed the tissue box to him. As the Chinese New Year approached, Luke brought his girlfriend to visit Howard. They first paid respects to Daisy, then sat down for a meal together. The young girl was very shy and didn't lift her eyes much. Luke teased her, saying, "Eat more, Grandpa will be happy. Look at these dishes, they're expensive. Their family only buys from that imported supermarket. At least you're treated like a minister. This bowl is also expensive, look how thin it is, and the flowers on top are beautiful. Even the chopsticks are expensive, the tips are made of gold, right?" Howard laughed and coughed. "Those chopsticks came as a gift when I bought the range hood." "You rascal." The girl finally chuckled, loosening up a bit. After finishing the meal, Howard took her to tour his study. He asked if she had finished high school, and she said yes, but her grades weren't good. Howard asked if she wanted to improve her education. Their college had a self-study program, and he could recommend her to attend. The girl shyly nodded. After the meal, they came out, and there was a light snowfall outside. Luke insisted on walking them to the entrance of the residential area, not letting Grandpa come out to see them off. When they reached the outside of the neighbor's yard, the girl suddenly said, "Is this the very expensive tree? It's so beautiful." Luke also said, "Didn't think much of it back then, but with a bit of snow on it, it does look quite nice." Howard asked, "Do you want me to take a photo of you too?" The two young people stood in front of the tree, full of vitality. In this photo, Luke, especially, resembled his son, and Howard couldn't help taking a few more shots. For a moment, he suddenly envied Daisy. In her heart, her son had truly come back, and she didn't care about his profession, future prospects, status, or position. She had enjoyed a period of the purest mother-son time.